The preseason is over. So what did we learn? That today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is October 20th. It will be October 21st, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, what we learned now that the Magic's preseason is over, the takeaways, the concerns, and everything in between today on Locked On Magic. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when you upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The preseason's done. The Orlando Magic got their big win Friday against the Philadelphia 76ers. We got 3 chances to see this team. And so, what do we know about this team after 3 preseason games? What do we know about this team after a week of training camp? Not a lot, unfortunately. And it's preseason, so we don't know a whole ton anyway. But there are some things that became very clear during the course of the preseason. Some things that I think we can say for certain. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. Because there's one thing, if there's one takeaway that I have from the preseason, from what we saw over the last 2 weeks of games, of just being in the building for practices, if there's one thing that I saw that means anything for the Orlando Magic this year, it's that Paolo Banchero is ready. That Paolo Banchero is going to have the kind of big season that we all hoped he'd have. I'm sorry if this feels like repeating some things. I know I've talked about it throughout the course of the preseason, but this is the big takeaway. This is the whole game. If you look at all the people ranking Paolo Banchero in their top 100s or talking about the Magic or trying to figure out who this Magic team is or is going to be, or trying to just figure out where to place the Orlando Magic within the Eastern Conference standings as they make their predictions, all of them come down to one simple question, to one key question. How good is Paolo Banchero? How good is he? Is he the elite of the elite in the NBA? Or is he just a high-volume scorer who puts up a lot of numbers and is still a very nice player, but not the kind of player that takes you to a championship? We have dealt all offseason with criticisms of Paolo Banchero, with criticisms of people saying, oh, he's too inefficient. Oh, the Magic broke even when he was on the floor and Franz was better. The Magic were better with him off the floor. There are all these criticisms and they are fair, but oftentimes too conclusory considering he's a second-year player who's 21 years old. We have dealt with that plenty during the summer. I don't need to mention names and who he's being compared to because this is about Paolo. Paolo understood he needed to get better. And to think that a 21-year-old of his stature was not going to get better is silly. The question is, how much better and how quickly will he get better? Can he put those efficiency questions to rest? Can he take the next step? It's preseason. So we take some of it with a grain of salt. We don't have all the answers yet. But Paolo Banchero's preseason suggested all the things that he talked about of being more patient, being more precise, of understanding better his fit in the offense, where he goes, where he gets his shots, how he can get his shots, understanding all of these things. it sure seems like Paolo took another step. It sure seems like Paolo understands and sees what he's capable of doing and how much he can still grow and how much he's going to grow. And it's, again, just preseason. But the way he imposed his impact on the game, whether he was scoring or not, suggested that there is a leap coming. That he is a player that is about to make this step into consideration for All NBA and carry this Magic team that much further. Look, I'm going to give you some preseason numbers. Take them with whatever grains of salt you need to take them with. But Paolo Banchero averaged 14 points per game in 21.2 minutes per game during the preseason. He shot 61.5% from the floor, was 2 for 4. I can't add today. He shot 50% from 3. 0.7 is 4 for 8. 4 for 8. That's not right. That's not right either. Oh, 3 games. Yeah, 4. Whatever it was. 2 for 4. There it is. It's 2 for 4 from 3. Sorry, I can't add today. He averaged 5 rebounds per game, 4 assists per game. Still turns the ball over a little bit, but clearly took a step with his way he read the game, of how he saw the floor and how he tried to get others involved. When the defense doubled him, he passed to the open man. When they didn't, he worked the middle of the floor, got to open space, and made shots. We know Paolo's going to score. We know he's going to force his way to the foul line, which he did for 3.7 free throw attempts per game in 21 minutes. So that's 3 plus 3, 9, 11 free throws. Again, he's 8 for 11 on free throws. We'll take that. In this small sample size, it sure felt like Paolo understood, had a better mastery and understanding of what he needed to do, of how he can grow and expand his game. And Paolo Banchero looked ready. Even in the game against New Orleans, he looked ready. Looked ready not only for the regular season, but ready to take a leap. Ready to put these questions about his efficiency and his statistical impact to the side. To make the right play and know when to impose himself. Look, he's 21, 22 years old. There's still going to be mistakes. There's still going to be turnovers. There might still be times where he falls into bad habits and takes a rush shot or over dribbles into a shot. There's still a lot for him to learn. But the biggest takeaway that I have from this preseason, the biggest thing that I came away from these 3 games saying to myself is, this Paolo Banchero kid is really good. And he's going to have a really big season. Because the ease at which he controlled the games that he was in and controlled the moments that he was in, that's the stuff that veteran players do. That's the stuff that the superstar players do. Paolo Banchero looked like a superstar, both in how he brushed off everything that got thrown at him, but also in how he attacked everything that got thrown at him, in how he approached each element of this game. Paolo looked ready to have a big season. Plain and simple. And that's something that's going to elevate this team. Because again, this Magic team goes as far as Paolo Banchero takes them. Again, it's really quite simple. Everything the Magic should be doing from here on out should be figuring out, how do we make Paolo Banchero's life easier? How do we make it so he can get the shots that he wants in the places he wants? That's all that matters. But it starts with Paolo getting better. And Paolo did not sit on his laurels. Did not sit there and say, I'm an all-star already. I've led my team to the playoffs. I'm a 25, potentially 25 point per game scorer. He didn't sit there. He got better. He got under more control, and he understands what he needs to do and how he needs to change to help his team win. That's what we saw throughout the 3 preseason games. That's what we saw. And now he's about to take that big next step. And we'll see how it all comes together Wednesday, obviously. But Paolo Banchero is ready for a big season. And frankly, that's the only thing that I feel like I know 100% for sure after 3 preseason games. Paolo's efficiency is obviously one of the big questions the Magic face. The other is at point guard. We'll talk about how the Magic handled the point guard position coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at BetterHelp. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? We all get stuck thinking about what scares us. That's the fun of Halloween, and what a lot of horror movies do a really good job tapping into is the things that seem ordinary that scare us, not just the monsters. But what about real life fears? What about the real things that keep you from being your best, that you have to overcome? Sometimes we need a help. Sometimes we need that person to help us overcome these fears. And therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them. Because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. I've used therapy throughout my life to help me understand and confront these fears so that I can be a better reporter, be a better human, be a better person, just be better in general. So I'm not just stuck in the same place or held back. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. So switch therapists anytime for no additional charge until you find the person that you connect with and can help you. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA today. So one of the big questions, and I think the biggest frustration that I've seen from fans is that, yes, the Magic were banking on internal improvement. You know, they brought a lot of the roster back. They want Paolo Banchero to be better. They want Franz Wagner to be better. They want all these players to get better internally. And the Magic certainly went out of their way to ensure that these players, didn't necessarily have roadblocks to be the players that they want them to be, to continue expanding and growing their games. We are not a finished product here in Orlando. The Magic are not done growing and developing. And again, remember, growth is not linear. We'll have some hiccups. We'll have some struggles. We'll have some things to overcome. But the biggest criticism Magic fans had was that they did not address the point guard need. It was the biggest thing that I thought the Magic needed to resolve coming out of the playoff series. It was just clear to me against Cleveland that Paolo and Franz had to do so much to create for themselves. They didn't have the opportunity to get easy shots. Someone wasn't there setting them up for that spot up three or that shot in the dunker spot or just an easy look that they didn't have to work for. You get 2, 3, 4 points just off of looks like that, just off of assists from other people. And especially like Paolo with the efficiency question, he has to create so much on the ball and dribble so much. Your shooting percentage goes down every time you dribble, every time you take a dribble. The Magic did not address this need, though. They went out and got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who we'll talk about in a minute, but was very, very good. A very, very big signing and will help this team. But they entrusted the point guard spot in Jalen Suggs, who essentially was kind of guardrailed, was given bumpers last year to kind of find himself again after 2 injury-filled seasons and really embraced and thrived in the role that he was in. And then they turned it over to Anthony Black, a second-year player who essentially didn't play point guard his rookie year. Now, yes, nominally the point guard maybe brought the ball up, but wasn't a creator, wasn't getting downhill, wasn't much of a driver, didn't really have the ball in his hands very much. His front court touches especially were worse than some of the centers on the team. The Magic really limited Anthony Black's role last year. So Orlando came into year with this important need, not only not filled, but filled by two players who were completely unproven. And whether the Magic are able to expand and grow their offense, whether they're able to take their offense to the next step, because they had the worst offense in the league last year among teams that made the playoffs, is going to be dependent on these two unproven players. If you see people, and I might be included in this, afraid to pull the trigger on the Magic getting home court advantage, it's because this is such a huge question mark. And throughout the preseason, we started to see what this looks like. And look, I'm not here to say it's going to work perfectly, but I will exit the preseason saying this is something the Magic have addressed internally. And I think are in a better spot than I thought they were in May or thought they were in June or July. Jalen Suggs got better with each game in the preseason. He averaged 10.3 points per game, struggled with a shot, 34.6% shooting, 22.2% from three. He was, let me do math again, 4 for 18 from three. Not afraid to get him up. I like that. Actually like that. I don't mind him shooting 6 threes a game. Struggled a little bit with his free throws, but not so worried. Had 3.3 assists against 2.3 turnovers per game. A lot of turnovers in that first game. A lot of those turnovers came in that first game, but each game he got progressively better. And it's not so much, honestly, I don't care about the assists so much because assists are going to be fluid. This is a motion-based offense. It's a read-based offense. But Suggs got better at understanding how to attack and, more importantly, understanding how to organize. You would see even when Franz brings the ball up, Suggs is calling the play and pointing where guys need to be. And honestly, less than the assists and less than the playmaking thing, that's the kind of organization that you need from the point guard. Now, Suggs is going to have to take some command, and he is going to have to direct a little bit more clearly. He's going to have to direct with the ball in his hands. He's going to have to attack downhill. That's going to be a big piece of this puzzle and a big piece of how the Magic do get better and do improve. But having said that, Suggs looked a lot more under control. And as these games went on, a lot more confident in how he defines this role and how he defines what this looks like. Anthony Black, on the other hand, looked like a completely different player, a much more confident and aggressive driver. Given that little bit of freedom, given that ability in that role, he looked very comfortable attacking the rim a whole lot more. And Black, by all accounts, was the sort of MVP of training camp. In preseason, again, preseason stats, 9.3 points per game, shot 9 for 16 from the field, 3 for 6 from beyond the arc, averaged 4.3 assists per game and 2.7 turnovers per game. So turnovers, I think, are still going to be a little bit of an issue. That's going to be the big thing for the Magic this year. And with inexperienced point guards, you're going to expect some turnovers. And Paolo's going to commit some turnovers, and you'll probably get 6 or 7 turnovers per game just from Paolo, Suggs, and Black. And you probably don't want them over 8 total between the three. But Black looked willing to experiment, certainly, willing to get downhill, able to finish at the rim, able to make tough passes around and over defenses because of his size, and just looked so much more confident and physical with this play on both ends, to be honest, than he did last year. And so you look at this point guard position. You look at what the Magic have built at point guard. And, look, it's fudgy. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. Everybody has a role in playmaking. This isn't just a team that's going to have a guy that's going to average 7-8 assists per game and just dominate the ball and direct traffic. That's not who this team is. The offense, frankly, as a whole, and I think we saw this a lot Friday night. Friday night, really looked like the offense had come together in a week. Against the Sixers, the Magic were moving a lot more, getting players the ball in motion, getting them downhill so that they're taking the ball with some momentum. They're not stopping as much. They moved much quicker between kind of reads and kind of actions to get the ball moving a lot more. There's a lot more cutting, I feel like, as well. The Magic offense looks a little bit more active. Now, does that mean it's going to be better? I think it still gets stuck. I think that it's still getting stuck in certain areas and still needs someone or something to bail them out. And so someone's going to have to force some things. It'll be Paolo some nights. It'll be Franz sometimes. It'll be Jalen sometimes. It'll be AB. It'll be Cole. It'll be the normal people that you expect. But pace is going to be really important to get them into their sets quicker so that they have more time to try and break things down and try to find creases, try and find mismatches, try and find matchup advantages that they like. But overall, the Magic didn't answer the point guard question. But they found enough of a solution, I think, that it shouldn't be as big of a concern, at least from what we've seen so far. We should be willing to give this a chance. And if it doesn't work, well, there are point guard options out there. Everyone is expecting Portland maybe to trade Anthony Simons. Everybody is expecting Washington to trade Malcolm Brogdon. There will be point guard options when the trade market opens up in December. And the Magic have tradable assets now. They will be able to make a move if they need one. I don't think they'll be in a crisis at all. Their defense is still going to be legit. It's still going to be very, very good. And they'll be able to compete and win a lot of games. Because again, Paolo's taken a leap. I think Franz, we'll talk about Franz here in a minute, but Franz, I think, has also done some really nice things. And I think AB and Jalen have taken enough of a step forward that they can handle and maintain this position while continuing to grow. And ultimately, that's what we're talking about, this team continuing to grow. I mentioned Franz Wagner, though. And while the point guard question is one of the big ones, the bigger question now is whether Franz Wagner is ready to take another step and take a step up. And his preseason was not good, statistically at least. But I'll tell you why you don't need to worry about Franz Wagner. We'll lay those concerns coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, I hope you had a great NFL Sunday, and you can continue this season and start the NBA season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, do live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. NBA season is here. Opening night is Tuesday, and FanDuel has you taken care of with so many great odds involving the NBA, including the Orlando Magic's over-under at 47.5 wins. I'm actually going to double-check that it's still there because I've just been kind of saying that rote. Over-under 47.5 wins. The Magic's odds to make the playoffs sitting at -700, so favorite to make the playoffs. Boston's -100,000 to make the playoffs. That's kind of funny. You've got season average odds. You've got so many odds. Magic to win the Southeast Division. That's sitting at Magic -140. So favorites to win the Southeast Division. And yes, they've got opening night with the Heat now moving to a 2-point favorite. It was one point spread earlier in the week. Now it's the Heat by 2. Magic taking 2 points and the over-under at 209.5. You can check out why they're moving it toward the Heat. I don't know. Maybe that's where the money's moving. Put some money on the Magic to win at +2. You can find all those great odds and so much more at FanDuel. And again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Sorry about that. So we've hit the last segment. The last thing that we need to be concerned about, the last thing we need to learn and think about coming out of the Magic's preseason. And that is Franz Wagner. Obviously, a vitally important player for the Orlando Magic. Guy that they gave a max contract to this summer. A guy that was the second leading scorer on the team last year. A guy that is an all-star in the making. A near 20-point per game scorer. And again, I'll say this, freezing cold, take me later. My big prediction of the year, the Orlando Magic will have their first First time with 2 20-point per game scorers since 1996 with Penny and Shaq. This year, I think Franz does clear 20 points per game. But he's not a player that does not come with a lot of concerns. He struggled with his three-point shot last year. Obviously, Game 7 is still kind of rattling in everyone's head as much as we hate it. We watched the Olympics, saw him play exceptionally well in a lot of areas, but continue to struggle to shoot. And in the biggest game of that tournament, the semifinal against France, it's not that Franz Wagner disappeared. It's that he didn't impose himself on the game. He settled for passing. He did not find a way to get his shots up and ultimately did not seem like a factor as France upset Germany in that semifinal round. Franz Wagner's preseason has not quieted concerns. He averaged only 7.3 points per game, shot 29.6% from the floor. That is 8 for 27. He was 0 for 8 on threes. 0 for 8. So didn't make a three in the preseason. And didn't really fill up the stat sheet elsewhere. Now, I would say this is not concerning. It's the preseason. Franz was still getting to his spots, getting the kind of shots that we like him to get, was testing out something new. He wasn't always trying to get to the basket. A lot of fans want him to add a mid-range game. He started testing a mid-range game in the preseason. In fact, the first 3 plays of the Magic's preseason loss Friday set up Franz for mid-range shots. He was taking post-ups, step-backs, fadeaways from the mid-post. He was taking a lot of floaters from the mid-range instead of getting all the way to the basket. And as if he needed to remind us, in the second quarter of that game against Sixers, he decided to get to the basket whenever he wanted and scored there. I am not worried about Franz Wagner. I know the quality of shots he gets. And frankly, the shots that he was taking in the preseason are shots he needs to have in his bag. Do not get me wrong. But they're not the shots he's going to get all the time in the regular season. He's going to get all the way to the basket on a lot of those shots. He's going to finish around them. They're going to run a lot more pick and rolls for him than they did in this series, in the preseason. Frankly, I think the Magic spent the preseason getting Franz, seeing if Franz was comfortable adding these new elements to his game at game speed. And maybe he's not. Maybe he's not ready for that yet. But I have every confidence Franz is going to be fine when the games start to count on Wednesday. Having said that, the shooting is still really concerning. And it does look like Franz has adjusted his form a little bit. It does look like he understands that there's a little bit of a mental block that he has to get over. And frankly, the way he shot in the games is not the way I've watched him shoot in practice, which tells me the form is not quite muscle memory yet, that he's still kind of falling back into bad habits. If you watch his shots on Friday in that game, his three-point shots were really flat. Not a lot of arc on them, and they struggled to clear the rim. Now, maybe some of that is the Magic played guys extended minutes or extended runs in their stints and in their minutes, like the entire first quarter type stuff. And so, yeah, he's got to get a little tired. Maybe that's when form slacks. And so he's still working on it. He's still getting there. But look, he struggled in the Olympics. There's no getting around it. The three-point shot was not there in the Olympics. I know it's a different ball. I know it's a different court. I know it's a different three-point line. But he's got to make threes for the Magic to get to the next level. There's just no getting around it. And now that the Magic have paid him the max contract, now that the Magic have him secured at that big number, he's got to deliver. Again, I would argue that while the three-point shot is really important, that doesn't take away how effective Franz can be. Because Franz is going to get to the basket when he wants to. He's going to put pressure on the rim. Him showing in the Olympics that he's a better playmaker is a big boost. And preseason, he didn't pass very much. 1.3 assists per game against 1.7 turnovers per game. So that part of his game wasn't always there. And again, he wasn't always trying to get all the way to the basket. So Franz has to add another element to his game. He has to be a threat in multiple ways. We know what he can do with the ball in his hands. The three-point shot being there would be super nice. If the three-point shot's not going to be there, he's got to be a better playmaker. And look, he is a better playmaker than his numbers show. I think he gets a lot of secondary assists and is always making the right play. He's never trying to force anything. And that was something I noticed in preseason. It not that he was forcing his offense. He was looking to shoot. He wanted to get shots up. And so I think when the regular season begins, we'll see Franz kind of revert back to some of the decision-making that we know he's really good at. But if you're concerned about the Magic, about Franz and his three-point shooting, he didn't quiet those concerns. And he has a lot to prove still. He has a lot that he has to get done and a lot that he has to show to get the Magic where they need to be and where he needs to be. But it's just preseason, and these players are not veterans, but they know the drill. They know how to get themselves ready. And frankly, I know Franz knows how to get himself ready. I know he's going to be ready to go on Wednesday. I know he's going to be Franz Wagner. And even if he is just what he was last year, which, by the way, he was better at everything last year except his three-point shooting. As big as that is, Franz Wagner is a better player. And frankly, at the Olympics, we saw that he is an even better player now. I was impressed with his Olympic run. And while I was frustrated with how he played in the elimination games, he is a better player. Do not get it wrong. He is going to be fine. But obviously the Magic need that next level, that next step. And that will be the big question for them coming up this season. And the preseason only kept the concern. It didn't quiet them. But we'll find out when the games start to count here very soon. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, search or tune in Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the public podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And as always, thank you for your support. We also have a new project coming from the Locked On Podcast Network. We are sending out newsletters Monday through Friday. So get the latest on the Orlando Magic, catch up on everything you missed with the Magic, the latest from around the league, and so much more in our free newsletter. You can subscribe by going to LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Find Locked On Magic, subscribe to our Magic newsletter to get the latest from Locked On Magic, the latest on the Orlando Magic, as well as the latest from around the league and even a fantasy basketball tip and so much. These newsletters are really exciting. I've seen mock-ups of them. I've seen them. It's going to be a great, great, great thing for you to have in your inbox every single day, Monday through Friday. So definitely get on that before the season begins. Now that you're done listening to me, though, be sure to check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Become a fantasy basketball expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Josh Lloyd. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, we will be talking about Jalen Suggs. We will be talking all about what the Magic don't do, what the Magic did do, and what's ahead for Jalen Suggs this season. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.